If there's one thing the year 2024 will be remembered for, it'll be elections. From India to Britain, the European Union to South Korea, South Africa, Finland, France, Taiwan, and even Russia. Over 60 nations held elections this year. However, it's not over yet. One last global election remains. And it's just around the corner. The United States. The world's oldest modern democracy is set to vote this November. Americans will be choosing their 47th president. And running for the White House are former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. The presidential race in the US happens every 4 years. However, there is something constant in each election that has remained unchanged for over 175 years, and that is the day of the week when the elections are held: Tuesday. This year as well, Americans will be voting on November 5th, which is also a Tuesday. So why is Tuesday connected to America's democracy? Well, it's a bit of coincidence and tradition. The election day in the United States has been set in stone by federal law. The U.S. law calls for a presidential poll to be held on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. But how did the November Tuesday become so important for U.S. democracy? Let's find out. The U.S. Constitution does not designate a specific day for holding elections. However, it allows Congress to select the time and day for choosing electors or delegates. These delegates, in turn, vote to elect the president and vice president. The Constitution also gives some rights to the states to choose the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives. However, it also permits Congress to make or alter those state rules. So if the day hasn't been fixed, then how did Tuesday come into the picture? The U.S. declared itself independent from Britain in 1776. The United States ratified its Constitution in 1788. This was followed by the first elections that were held between November of 1788 and June 1789. Yes, voting that is now done within one day took up to 6 months when it first began. And subsequent elections continued to be chaotic. Things changed more than 5 decades later when the 1840 presidential election saw widespread voting fraud. In response, then Representative Alexander Duncan proposed a uniform election day for both presidential and House elections in 1844. The bill initially sought to require all states to hold their elections on a single day. That is on Tuesday after the first Monday in November. While the House passed the bill, the Senate didn't table it before the 1844 election. Alexander Duncan reintroduced the bill in the next session, this time focusing solely on the presidential election. Various amendments were proposed during the bill's consideration. Ultimately, the House adopted the bill, and the Senate passed it with minor corrections. The bill was signed into law on January 23, 1845, by President John Tyler, making Tuesday the official day for Americans to vote for their president. But the mystery remains: why choose a Tuesday? Historians say the answer lies in 19th-century American lifestyle. The choice of Tuesday in November is deeply rooted on the country's agrarian culture of the time. November was ideal because it followed the completion of the harvest season. The month also avoided conflicts with both planting in the spring and early fall. This meant that farmers could plant their crop and travel to vote, which would take days in those times. Additionally, Tuesday was chosen due to religious reasons. In Christian practice, the term Sabbath is often used to refer to Sunday. It recognizes the day of Jesus Christ's resurrection, and many Christians would observe a weekly day of rest and worship on Sunday. In the 19th century, polling stations were quite far from rural areas, and for voters, particularly farmers, it meant at least a day-long journey. So to avoid forcing people to travel on the holy day of Sabbath, Monday was not considered, and Wednesday, which was designated as the market day for farmers, was also rejected. Naturally, Tuesday emerged as the prime choice and eventually became the official day. However, Tuesday as an election day has had its fair share of opposition. Modern-day political experts say that voting on a weekend would see an increase in turnout. They argue that holding election on a Tuesday hinders voter access due to work commitments. One of the organizations leading the cause to reassign voting day is called Why Tuesday. Founded in 2005, the group raises awareness about America's low voter turnout. It aims to highlight the lack of accessible voting options, and they are leading the fight to move election day to the weekend. Many countries hold elections on weekends. Australia, Germany, France, and Japan generally conduct elections on Saturdays or Sundays. Brazil votes on the first Sunday of October, with runoffs on the last Sunday if needed. Meanwhile, Mexico shifted from the first Sunday of July to the first Sunday of June from 2021. The European Union also typically holds its parliament election on a weekend. However, in the Anglosphere, such as the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada, elections are typically held on weekdays. It is influenced by historical Christian practice of observing Sabbath. Meanwhile, in India, elections occur over multiple days with different phases for various constituencies. In the case of the United States, it's worth noting that while federal elections are on a Tuesday, state and local elections have more flexibility. However, many states align their elections with the federal date simply for convenience. On November 5th, the Tuesday after the first Monday of November, millions of Americans will line up at polling booths. They will exercise their fundamental right of self-governance. As for the Tuesday election day, the law that has continued for over 175 years faces little opposition and will likely remain for many more years to come.